Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of The Chase with Jace. I'm your host, Jace Lejeune, and we're going to talk some LSU football. For the first time since 2019, LSU is 4-0 to start the season. It has been a minute, it's been a long time since we can say LSU's undefeated to this point of the year. And this was really a get-right game last week against Southeastern. This game, no offense to Southeastern, it was all about LSU. It was focused on LSU, get your offense right, get your quarterback right. You knew what you had in your defense. I don't think there's really much you can really improve on already from the way your defense has been playing. But there were a lot of odds to see how healthy Garrett Nussmeier was and how effective the offense would be in running the offense. And we got some answers on that on Saturday, this past Saturday. Obviously, we're going to take it to another level this upcoming Saturday against Ole Miss. And we'll have a better idea of how good this LSU offense is, if all the troubles have been fixed, the problems have been fixed. We're going to talk a little bit about the Southeastern game last week, some of my takeaways. If you want to read more about my takeaways from the last week's game, make sure to go to our website, gridironfootballusa.com. And then also we'll go and dig deeper into the Ole Miss game too. So without further ado, let's talk about last Saturday. It was a 56-10 win over the Southeastern Lions, a very commanding game. And after a 3-and-out by LSU, everybody was starting to worry, here we go again. Offense is struggling and everything, but it only took one drive after that. Here come the Tigers. After, I believe, 8 straight touchdown drives against Southeastern, they're really dominant. And we're going to go into how effective the offense was. But this is exactly what you needed. This is what people were actually looking for in the Louisiana Tech game. Remember, LSU only won that game 23-7. And defensively, they were definitely no danger of losing that game, of how rock solid the defense was. But a lot of people are concerned about the offense because they only scored 23 points. You fast forward a week later against Florida, you have 5 interceptions on defense. You've only scored 20 points, and 7 of those 20 resulted in an interception for a touchdown. So you really only scored 13 points on offense. So people want to see 40 or more points on the board. If you look back at the last week's show on The Chase with Jace, I said the same thing. You want to see 40 or more points on the scoreboard. LSU was able to do that, and they got that really in the first half. They were pretty dominant. And we're going to go into some of the takeaways from that game and how it looked. Obviously, you don't want to take a lot from the Southeastern game because we're going to say what it is. I'm a Southeastern alum. I'm a pride Southeastern alum, so I'm going to say line up and everything. I actually talked to a lot of people when I was at Southeastern. Kimler, who was the sports information director at Southeastern. A lot of the people that I went to Southeastern with, they were there to cover the game. So I want to give a shout out to my Lions. But this is one of those games you can name your score, against LSU, because LSU is the better opponent. They got the better players. They got the more money. That's the reason why Southeastern plays that game, is to get paid and get money in their program, to say what it is. But there's some things you can work on if you're LSU, and it's a get-right game, and that's exactly what it was. And we're going to talk about really my first takeaway. And everybody that's Chicken Little out there and saying that the sky is falling and that Garrett Nussmeier is hurt and what we're going to do and all of that, this is the takeaway number one, and this is what everybody wanted to look at. Garrett Nussmeier is just fine. He looked healthy. He looked good. He is back to his normal self. He is just fine. He looked crisp. He looked sharp. He was in command of the offense. And 2 plays really stood out to my mind that told me, okay, he is healthy. Remember, there were reports earlier that week from Brian Kelly. He said that Garrett Nussmeier was dealing with a torso injury, which you can imagine if you're trying to throw a football. It's probably pretty tough to throw with a torso injury, especially using your lower half of your body. But Garrett Nussmeier was efficient. 25 for 31 passing, 273 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also had a rushing touchdown. Even though the rushing touchdown, I kind of had to squint a little bit because that was the first touchdown in the game, and they ran a quarterback sneak with Garrett Nussmeier, which a lot of people are thinking, okay, you're going to run a quarterback sneak with a quarterback that's banged up, that's trying to overcome an injury, and then with a torso injury. So that was like, okay, I get it. Maybe you take a couple one or two hits there, but you definitely don't want him to take a lot of hits against Southeastern and aggravate that injury. But the stat line doesn't tell the whole story because he was 25 for 31. The wide receivers dropped about 5 passes. There was one that was dropped by Nick Anderson that should have been a touchdown. All of his passes were like on target. He was not off. He should have finished like 30 for 31 or 31 for 31. But his wide receivers dropped some passes. So Garrett Nussmeier had an A+. I mean, he was exactly what you needed. He got in, he got out, he led the offense to a couple touchdown drives. I mentioned the 3 touchdowns as well. He also ran for a long run. Probably longer than, it was probably around 19 yards, 15, 19 yards down the sidelines, but that was probably the longest run I've ever seen Garrett Nussmeier run because you don't really see him as a Jaden Daniels that can tuck it in a run that much. Now, he's effective. I think he's kind of like Joe Burrow in the fact that he's kind of sneaky athletic. You don't really think of him as a runner, but he can be a decent runner. It's just about him deciding to run the football a little bit more. But you saw that get down the sidelines. The other play that told me that he was healthy was the last touchdown pass he threw. He actually scrambled outside the pocket. The pocket was collapsing. He went to the outside, to the left, and he threw the ball pretty much across his body on a rope to his right. And he found Xavier Thomas in the back of the end zone, and it was on the rope. And that tells me there, the Florida game, he threw that touchdown pass to Xavier Thomas, just standing up in the pocket, and it didn't have the same zip on the throw as it did that Southeastern game. So that throw told me that's a tough throw to make. And there's only a few people that can make that throw. He can get away with it. And that velocity on that throw told me that Garrett Nussmeier is just fine. And he's going to be fine moving forward. Brian Kelly said that he's been dealing with this injury, and that could explain some of the limitations of this offense and how the offense has played. Now, Brian Kelly said he's on the back end of it, and people are asking, should Garrett Nussmeier even play against Southeastern? And I even said last week on the show that you have to play. You have to play, especially how the offense has kind of struggled. You have some new wide receivers. Feel good about yourself, right? See it, throw a couple touchdowns, build some confidence, because guess what? You don't have any cakewalks anymore. You got the SEC coming up, and every game is going to be a gauntlet. So you want to enter that gauntlet with some confidence, because you got to go on the road against an Ole Miss football team that's ranked a top 15 opponent, which we'll talk about later. But that's my first takeaway, was that Garrett Nussmeier was just fine. He's back to his normal self, and that was the type of performance that you needed from him. My second takeaway is the running game. Obviously not perfect, and that is something still a concern about LSU, is that they're not dominant running the football. But hey, they weren't really dominant running the football last year with the offensive line they had last year, which was an experienced group. This is more of a new group, and you still were not dominant against Southeastern. But a player to be excited about in the running game is actually a former quarterback in Juwan Johnson. He's somebody that you can be really excited about. He had 43 yards on 8 carries, scored 2 touchdowns in the game. It's been an interesting journey for Juwan Johnson. He played at LCA and set all kinds of records as a quarterback in terms of yards, touchdowns in Louisiana. So you would think with all of that he would play quarterback, but he actually went to LSU as a defensive back. So he starts off his college career on defense, and then in the middle of last year he moves to running back. Then this offseason he moves to quarterback, and then in the spring, and then when you get Colin Hurley back, because Colin Hurley suffered a car accident and wasn't with the team, that's why Juwan Johnson was able to play quarterback. You move him back to running back during fall camp. So he's been going all over the place, defense to offense, to running game, to running back, to quarterback, you name it. So he's moved all over the place. But the talent and versatility is there, especially, he's a former quarterback, so he kind of understands. He kind of understands how to pass block. He understands how to run. He's a great athlete. That's why he set all kinds of records at LCA because of his ability to run. So he's not afraid. He's still a pretty big body, 210 pounds, and he can run between the tackles, and he shows a little bit of explosiveness there, and you saw the ability to break away from tacklers, and he's going to be a guy who's going to have to step up because there are some rumors about Caden Durham, LSU starting running back, and he dealt with an ankle injury during the Southeastern game, and he is questionable for Saturday. So if you're starting running back, Caden Durham is questionable for Saturday, who's going to be RB1? And it may be Juwan Johnson. He may be RB1 for LSU because he's gotten more carries than the other guys have. And you see the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, to run between the tackles. So he's a guy that can get you a little something in the running game. So how much will they rely on Juwan Johnson? I think it will be a lot. I mean, I think he's going to get the majority of the carries, especially if Caden Durham is going to be out for Saturday. So that's going to be something to look at and monitor as we go throughout the rest of this week. We filmed the show on a Wednesday. We'll probably won't get the staff's report on that until about Friday or even tomorrow and Thursday. So keep an eye on that. But 43 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8 carries. So with Caden Durham kind of being day-to-day with that ankle injury, it could be Juwan Johnson moving forward, especially this Saturday against Ole Miss. So he stepped up. Now you still have not a lot of depth behind Juwan Johnson, but you have some guys that have shown that they can play. I mean, Caleb Jackson's been there as more veteran back on this team. You need him to step up in a bigger role if Caden's not able to play. Harlem Berry is a freshman, a 5-star freshman. There's no doubt about his running ability, especially on the outside. I think the question goes, can he run in between the tackles, and can he pass protect? And there were years when Joe Burrow was the quarterback. He had John Emery, remember, 5-star freshman running back from Destrehan. And basically Joe Burrow did not really trust Emery to be out there that early because of pass protection. That's why you saw more Clyde Edwards-Helaire, more Tyron Davis-Price in pass protection, because they can help protect Joe Burrow. It's kind of the same thing here with Garrett Nussmeier. Who do you trust back there to help pass protect? And Frank Wilson, he doesn't want his running backs touching the field unless they can pass protect. They can be as talented of a running back, a runner with the football, but if you can't pass protect, you can't really see the field. And Juwan Johnson looks like he's probably the best candidate for that. And it's kind of crazy considering that, knowing that he's already moved from quarterback to running back. So it's been an interesting story for Juwan Johnson. The third takeaway from the game. These are really the 3 biggest takeaways. The other 2 kind of is what we kind of already thought. But the third biggest takeaway from the Southeastern game is Michael Van Buren, the backup quarterback to Garrett Nussmeier. Because there was, especially with Garrett Nussmeier dealing with these injuries, and you don't know if he can hold up for a whole season, you definitely need some insurance policy at a pretty good backup quarterback. Michael Van Buren comes in. He's a Mississippi State transfer. He played a lot for Mississippi State last year. And during fall camp, I won't just say what it was during fall camp, but it was pretty underwhelming. You thought going in Michael Van Buren would automatically be the backup quarterback and give you some depth there, but a lot of people were concerned about that because Michael Van Buren didn't have the best fall camp out there. He missed a lot of guys, especially during 7-on-7 one-on-ones, even when the defense wasn't going to try to rattle his neck or try to tackle him, right? But he came in after Garrett Nussmeier was done. You knew what you're up by. You're up by 35 points. Garrett Nussmeier already did his thing. You're pulling him out. Now here's an opportunity for Michael Van Buren to see what he can do. And he definitely cemented himself as the second quarterback because there were some speculation. Is it Michael Van Buren? Is it Colin Hurley? Is it even Juwan Johnson? He goes back to quarterback, who is quarterback number 2? And it's pretty clear that it's Michael Van Buren. He was pretty nearly flawless between both Nussmeier and Van Buren. They both could have had perfect days throwing the football. Van Buren was 10 for 12, 120 yards, threw a nice touchdown pass to Kyle Parker. And then he also ran for a touchdown too. He led his first 2 drives as an LSU Tiger to touchdowns. So that's pretty impressive there. And I think they're pleased. They know that they can trust Michael if he comes in the football game. And what I learned from that game is maybe Michael's just a gamer. He's just not one of those guys that looks great in practice, but you throw him in a football game and he's a gamer. He did that in Mississippi State. He balled out against Georgia. He balled out against other SEC teams when their starting quarterback Blake Shapen got hurt. So he was able to step in and make a lot of plays. And I think it gives you some confidence with the coaching staff, with Joe Sloan and the offensive coaching staff, knowing that if something were to happen with Garrett Nussmeier, I'm not saying nothing is. You definitely want to have Garrett Nussmeier the rest of the season, the rest of the way. But you could feel more confident knowing, okay, we could put Michael Van Buren in there if we have to. So that's kind of a takeaway there. The fourth takeaway, if there's one, I guess there's just some bad news. In these type of games, there's more harm than good because a lot of times you lose guys to injury. Look at the Louisiana Tech game. In that football game, you lose Trey'Dez Green at the end of the football game. You're tied in, and that was one of those situations where if you're up by more, he's not in that football game at that point. But it turns out it was only 23-7. He's still in that football game in the fourth quarter, and he gets injured. Same thing. Braylon Moore, he gets injured first play of the game at center with an ankle injury. And it's kind of the same thing here. Gabriel Relaford did get hurt against Southeastern. He's dealing with a shoulder injury. They're not really sure how serious his injury is going to be. Like, can he play with his shoulder, or does he need surgery on it? So that's going to be something LSU is going to have to figure out. If it needs surgery, obviously Gabriel Relaford is going to be out for a couple weeks. Now, the good news about this, you don't want any injuries. Obviously, you don't want any injuries. But if there is an injury, you want at a position that you're really deep at. And LSU is really deep at defensive end. You have, obviously, your starters. I mean, I wrote a piece about this on our website, once again, GridironFootballUSA.com, about how deep the LSU defense is and how many options they really have on that side of the football, but especially on the front seven. You go and look. You have two transfers. You have Jack Pyburn from Florida. You have Patrick Payton from Florida State. They're your starting two. Then the next guy up is Jamari Butler. He is Nebraska transfer. Then you got obviously you got Gabriel Relaford. So who's going to be that fourth pass rusher? Well, we talked about those three probably taking more snaps in those three guys. But Dylan Carpenter came in from the Samlaw product. He came up with a sack. Damian Shanklin late in the football game, a star freshman, had 2 sacks late in the football game. Maybe gets more playing time there. You got C.J. Jackson, a talented freshman, Kalaj Cobbins, who had a great fall camp last year. So you got options there at defensive end. So I think they're going to be just fine there. LSU's defense was just outstanding once again. 30 total yards given up by the first team defense, and only 2 first downs. And those 2 first downs were via penalty. It wasn't like they converted a first down against them. This LSU defense has been so phenomenal to start the season. Think about this. You've only scored, so you scored 17 points in week 1. You've only scored 23 in week 2, 20 in week 3. Now this game, your take care of business got 56. But your defense all year long has given up 37 points through 4 games. That is pretty impressive. And only 1 touchdown per game. Is what they've given up. They've given up 1 touchdown. And this week, that touchdown, I'm sure the first team defense was pretty upset with the second string defense because that's what gave up the only touchdown against Southeastern. So I made the joke about how Whit Weeks is probably going to, beat up his younger brother, Zach Weeks, because Zach Weeks was part of that second string defense. They gave up a touchdown. So, the Weeks brothers are probably going to beat up their younger brothers. Like, dude, did you, of course, your defense, y'all were able to give up that only touchdown in the football game to Southeastern. But all joking aside, this defense is really great. And you didn't have Wes Weeks in the game. Wes Weeks was still overcoming that injury just the other week against Florida, so he didn't play. But he should be available against Ole Miss. Devon Keys has emerged as a linebacker, and we could talk about the defensive backs have been so great in the back end of the defense with Mansour Delane, with the safeties A.J. Halsey, Tamarcus Cooley, the freshman D.J. Pickett. P.J. Wendell in that cornerback. You have Harold Perkins, at linebacker. So this LSU defense is great. One of the best defenses I've seen. And they're going to get tested, though. We're going to talk about that Ole Miss game. They're going to be tested really probably for the first time, really get tested by their offense. So we'll talk about that. But this LSU defense is, I know they're going to keep this team in the game every single Saturday. And the last takeaway about the Southeastern game, this win shows the best version of what this LSU team can be. Meaning that the style of play that was played in that Southeastern game, I think is the style of play LSU needs to play moving forward. At this point of the season, this is week 4? You've been through 4 games already. This is week 5, your 5th game coming up. So you are what you are. At this point, middle of the season, you know what kind of football team you are. There's no sugarcoating anything. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, and now you can always try to improve your weaknesses a little bit, but you pretty much know what you are. Defensively, you're going to lean on your defense. Your defense is phenomenal. Now, are there going to be games where your defense isn't at their best effort? They're not at their best. They don't have their best A game. Yes, and we talked about that Joe Burrow LSU season. There was one game when that offense wasn't at their best A game, and their defense stepped up. That's the point I'm trying to make. Is there going to be a game when the defense is not at its best? Will the offense step up? And that might be a question that might be answered this Saturday. But this team, they're going to rely on their defense, and you have a veteran quarterback. You have Garrett Nussmeier leading the way. You got some talented receivers to throw the football to. You can't really run the football. That is a weakness. That is just what you are. You average 3.9 yards per carry against Southeastern. So if you average 3.9 yards per carry against Southeastern, that's pretty much as good as it's going. This year. Maybe the Clemson game, you're able to run the football a little bit, but you have to rely on your pass game. Now you just need enough of your running game to kind of make things a little easier for Garrett Nussmeier and the offense. I'm not worried about the passing game. This passing game is going to click. I still think the injury to Garrett Nussmeier kind of held the offense just a little bit. They got so many different weapons. They know what they got in their. I think they know what they got in their 3 receivers. I think there's a little bit of a pecking order there the last couple of games. Aaron Anderson is one of Nussmeier's top receivers. You could trust in Xavion Thomas. He's made some key plays for you throughout the season. Barrion Brown has become another target. Those 3 guys, you definitely want to see. Can Chris Hilton step up? It's been a slow start to the season for Chris Hilton, but can he pick it up? You got 2 great tight ends to throw the football to, and Bowery Sharp, and you do return Trey Green. That's great news. I saw him warm up in the Southeastern game with a brace, and he was out there jumping and catching. And I was like, okay, he's going to be good. He's not going to play against Southeastern because they don't need him against Southeastern, but he should be able to play against Ole Miss, and he should be ready. So you got weapons on offense. So you're in the receiving game. So you're going to rely on your offense, be a pass-efficient offense. Don't turn the football over. You're Garrett Nussmeier. Don't make the foolish play when you're a gunslinger. You have to throw the ball across your body in double coverage. Don't do anything crazy like that. Just be effective, efficient on offense, throwing the football, and I think that will back up this defense. So you kind of know what you are right now. And hopefully the big playability can improve, but you kind of know what you are. So those are basically my 5 takeaways from the Southeastern game. So let's basically turn the page after the Southeastern game. Let's talk about Ole Miss. Big game. LSU's number 4. They dropped 1 spot in the AP poll. They are now number 4 in the country, and they'll take on Ole Miss, who is number 13 in the country. This is a huge game. If it was any other week, this will probably be the top game in college football. But you're playing on a week that also has Alabama and Georgia and also Penn State and Oregon. So those are some pretty good big games too. So it's a great slate in college football. This is a huge game for LSU. If they can get this game, go on the road, and get a victory against the Rebels, this will help really jumpstart the conversation even more about how LSU should be a college football playoff team this year. Anytime you can go on the road and get a win, that'll be big. Ole Miss, they're trying to make a point too. I mean, obviously last year, everybody was saying that last year's Ole Miss team had all the pieces. They were all in, transfer portal, all in, with the money buying this football team last year to make the college football playoff, and they fell short. They fell short of their accomplishment. Now this year, LSU is all in. They put all the chips in. Lane Kiffin was talking about earlier in this press conference how LSU has the 3 most expensive defensive backs in the portal. So you know how much money LSU has spent on their roster. It's like $5 million, something like that, on spending on their roster. So you know it's a lot. And last year, it doesn't mean just because you spent the most money on your roster that you're going to win the football game. Look at last year. Ole Miss spent the more money on their roster than LSU did last year. LSU won that football game, and it was at LSU. Here on Saturday, LSU has spent the most money than Ole Miss, more money than Ole Miss. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win this Saturday. So you're playing on the road. I know Lane Kiffin's not happy with it being a 2:30 kickoff. He wants a night kickoff. So he wasn't really happy with it being a day kickoff. But this is still going to be a big game, big road environment. LSU showed that they can handle that against Clemson in week 1, being on the road. This is another opportunity to be on the road and showcase what you can do. Basically, the couple things I want to know is Ole Miss. I even asked Brian Kelly about this, but Ole Miss has played 2 quarterbacks this year, Austin Simmons, and the other name, which is a unique name, but he's a pretty good football player, Trinidad Chambliss. That is the other quarterback at Ole Miss, and Trinidad has been dynamic for Ole Miss. He had himself a great football game the last 2 weeks. I mean, he's really been balled out against Arkansas, had a huge game against Tulane. He's definitely been the hotter quarterback of the 2. But going into the season, Ole Miss was going to name Austin Simmons as their quarterback, as their QB1. So Austin Simmons has been dealing with some injuries. Trinidad's come in and has stepped up. But are they going to play both quarterbacks? So I asked Brian Kelly about that, and he did say that when I asked Brian Kelly about this, he did say that both quarterbacks have similar skill sets. So it's not like one quarterback is just a pocket passer and the other quarterback's more of a dual threat quarterback that can throw and run. Both these 2 quarterbacks, now, one has a stronger arm than the other one. One's probably a little bit better of a runner than the other one. But they still have similar skill sets to run the offense. So I don't think it's going to be a huge, huge difference between the 2 and preparing for both of them. But this will be Chambliss' 3rd career start at Ole Miss. His first 2 career starts, Arkansas, threw for 353 yards and a touchdown. Also ran for 2 touchdowns. Against Tulane, 307 yards, and ran for another 112. He's had a great start. He's a great football player. But he did come from Division II. He went a big jump. He went from Division II Ferris State. I'm not sure a lot of people know what Ferris State is. I don't even know what Ferris State is. But he made the jump from Ferris State to now playing quarterback at Ole Miss. That's a pretty big jump. And you're going to have a pretty big jump in competition on Saturday against LSU's defense. So that is going to be intriguing to watch. How does he handle no offense to Arkansas and Tulane, but this is a big step up on defense you got to play against LSU. And I think this LSU defense will travel. So that chess match between Lane Kiffin, who's one of the best offensive play callers in college football, and LSU's defensive coordinator, Blake Baker, is going to be really fun to watch. And that's going to be intriguing to watch in itself because, Ole Miss's offense is pretty elite. LSU's defense is pretty elite. So that's going to be a really good chess match between both the sides of the football right there. How good could Chambliss be against LSU's defense? And, look on the other side. Remember what happened last year with LSU? What was the problem with LSU last year? They couldn't stop the running quarterback. And they're going to be tested with the running quarterback. Trinidad Chambliss is an athletic dual-threat quarterback. So that's going to be a different thing to prepare for. And LSU's defense has had trouble defending the running quarterback. So the first couple weeks, you've had Cade Klubnik. Now, he can run the football. So you've dealt a little bit with that with Klubnik. But, he's still not as dynamic of a runner as others. You play DJ Lagway, who's really more of a pocket guy. And then you dealt with Southeastern and Louisiana Tech's quarterbacks. So this is going to be a little bit of a step up for them as well in terms of the offense you're going to be playing against, in terms of this offense going up-tempo, how the different schemes, the different things that Lane Kiffin likes to throw at you. So this is going to be a test for LSU's defense as well. Now, the key here is, for LSU, you're going to have really good on good, and you're going to have average to below average against average to below average. We're talking about LSU's offense against Ole Miss's defense. So this year, it's been a little bit underwhelming. LSU overall, 391 yards per game. That's 71st in the FBS. 274 yards passing. That's 31st in the FBS. They rank 112th in the country in rushing. 116 yards a game. So you're going to run the football, which has not been good for you at LSU, against Ole Miss's rush defense. That's 121st in the country. So you have a running game, which might be the difference in the football game. We talk about LSU's great defense, Ole Miss's great offense, and LSU can certainly throw the football as well with Garrett Nussmeier when they need to. But I think what comes down to it is who's going to be more effective in an area which both teams have not been effective this year. LSU can't run the ball against anybody. Ole Miss can't stop anybody running the football. Something has to give. Who is more successful in that area? Can LSU run the football? Can Ole Miss stop the run? I think that key there could be the difference in this game. LSU's defense has been playing lights out, phenomenal. Like I mentioned, they gave up, 10 points. They gave up 7, then 10, then 10 again. They're not going to give up 10 points against Ole Miss. I just don't think. If they do, then this LSU defense is right there with that 2011 defense, if they can do that. But I think LSU's defense still wins some battles. I think what they need to do is they need to give up, 21, 24 to give their offense a shot. And maybe what helps is if they give up 24 points and they get an interception or a fumble or they get a couple turnovers to help out their offense, I think that will be a win for LSU's defense if they can do that. The key to this game for LSU, the offense is going to need to step up. This is going to have to be the game. I think the first couple games of the year, you can lean on your defense. I think this game here on the road against Ole Miss, this needs to be a show-me game for your offense. And just for the team in general. I think the best thing for this team is if LSU's defense doesn't necessarily have the best game, and LSU's offense shows they can win. If they can have a game like that, then I think there's going to be a lot more people buying into LSU and how good LSU can be. Because we know how great the defense is. We know what they've been able to do. Now, can the offense step up? That is going to be the key. If LSU can do that, if let's say LSU's defense gives up 24 points, 27 points, and LSU's offense scores 30 points, and finds a way to win on the road, then this will make sure everybody knows that, hey, LSU can win games multiple ways. Whether it's leaning on their offense, leaning on their defense, they show they can be a complementary football team and they can win multiple different ways. So that's going to be something to look out for. And I have to address the elephant in the room here too. I know everybody's been talking about what's been going on off the field this past week, but yet the rumors are true that Whit Weeks, the star LSU linebacker, is dating Landry Kiffin, Lane Kiffin's daughter, and people are saying, "Oh, this is like gamesmanship from both people." I've heard like, "Oh, only reason Whit Weeks is dating Lane's daughter is to get some intel on Ole Miss's offense and stuff like that." And I've heard the other way around, that Lane Kiffin, this is a whole scheme by Lane Kiffin for his daughter to date Whit in order to get some intel on the LSU's defense. So I've heard it both ways. I think they're just having a good time. They're getting together. That's just all it is. But I think it's off the field. So it's something you have to. And I think Whit Weeks understands that. So I know he's basically, one of the top players in college football and one of the team leaders for this defense. So I think he understands to separate the two on the field, off the field. It's an interesting dynamic. I think Lane Kiffin was even asked about Whit and what kind of person he is. And Lane had good stuff to say about Whit. So it is interesting. You don't see this every day, especially when it was announced this week officially that basically one of LSU star players is dating the daughter of the opponent's head coach, that is definitely a first and something that is unique, but I don't think it has anything to do with how this game is going to unfold. But I just thought that was funny, really interesting, and interesting timing that this was all being released. I think there was a hunch maybe like a month or two ago that there was a video and people were speculating that Whit and Lane Kiffin's daughter were dating, but it's still kind of crazy kind of thing about that. But yeah, I think Whit will have a great game, and it's going to be an interesting just a storyline, and an interesting tidbit to kind of look at for the game on Saturday. For my game pick and who I think will win on Saturday, well, I can't tell you. I'll just have to go to GridironFootballUSA.com. I'll have my game preview, and I'll have my score prediction as well. I think right now Ole Miss is favorite, about 1.5. So we'll see. That's basically a pick 'em. I think LSU started off as the favorite. Now Ole Miss is the favorite. So that's going to go back and forth as we go throughout the week. But it's going to be a pick 'em. Huge opportunity for LSU. Basically, if you get this win, it sets up pretty good for you. Because you look at the schedule coming up for LSU, you have a bye after this game. So you definitely want to enter a bye well rested, but you want to enter a bye with some confidence too. If you come off a big win, you feel good about yourself. You go to the bye at 5-0. You can rest, relax, and feel good about yourself. After the bye, you go back home. You go back to LSU. You play South Carolina. And then it really picks up. I mean, you have Vanderbilt, which in years past, you say, Vanderbilt, we got this. But Vanderbilt's really good. They're 18th ranked team in the country. They're going to be really tough. Let's see. Let's see here. LSU got Texas A&M. And then LSU's got Alabama. Of course, the end things, Arkansas. And we don't know what Arkansas is going to do with their coach. And then you have Western Kentucky and Oklahoma. So that's kind of the schedule moving ahead for LSU after this Ole Miss game. But big opportunity. I think it's going to be a really close football game and an opportunity for LSU to get a big win on the road. And a lot of people still, even though they're ranked top 5 in the country, LSU is, a lot of people still doubting how good this LSU team can be. So this is an opportunity to show them. And they can get a win on the road against Ole Miss. I think it'll prove a lot of people wrong, and I think get a lot of people excited. So we'll see. We'll be back next week. Obviously, won't be any game we'll preview next week, but we'll reflect on the Ole Miss game, the first couple weeks of the season. Maybe have a guest on to talk about as well, since we'll be airing the bye week. So, guys, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure to go to GridironFootballUSA.com. We got all kinds of great stories, great content, so make sure to check that out. Our bowl game commits, we got a lot of guys starting to commit to our Gridiron Football American Bowl game, so we'll have a lot of that content coming up for you soon. I'm Jace Lejeune. Thank y'all for watching. This has been The Chase with Jace.